So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here at BSN Network. Kanuki back here, BSN Network. This is the BSN Network podcast here today. It is Friday, May 21st. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is in fact Friday, May 21st here today. We are coming off of another full day of baseball, and hockey was on yesterday along with the NBA. So a lot of sports to get to today in the podcast. The Yankees got yet another win. We took 3 of 4 from the Texas Rangers. Very happy about that. I will take it as now we head on home back to Yankee Stadium on a 6-game homestand. 3 against Chicago. It's a weekend series starting tonight into Sunday, and then 3 against the Blue Jays starting on Tuesday and going into next Thursday. So a big opportunity for the New York Yankees to get some more wins. We're playing a good Chicago White Sox team today. And obviously, we're playing a good Chicago White Sox team the next couple of days here, and then we're playing a very good pitcher tonight, Carlos Rodon. So, a guy who has a below 2 ERA and has pitched a no-hitter this season. So, Yankees definitely are going to have to bring their A game. It's going to be a much better hitting team. The White Sox, I don't see the White Sox getting shut out twice this series unless if the Yankees pitching is that dominant. But the Rangers, they don't have a very good offense. They're not a very good pitching staff. So, we did what we needed to do against the Texas Rangers. Won 3 out of 4 yesterday. Got a good win, and now we, today we're back and at Yankee Stadium, and a lot of times I could just revamp a team. Heading back home, being back home after a long road trip like that is just a good opportunity to just go out after a 10-day road trip. 3 in Tampa, 3 in Baltimore, 4 in Texas. An opportunity, come back home, get back into your own building and, try and get some more wins. And obviously we open up tonight with the White Sox, and then we have 2 day games. Tonight against the White Sox, a day game tomorrow and a day game Sunday, and then a day off Monday, and you open up a series against Toronto, and then we go on the road against Detroit, and then so on and so forth. I forget the rest, but that's kind of your next week of Yankee baseball. So hopefully we do well there. I was watching a lot of NHL last night. I don't know about you guys. I'm sure many of you were. As that was not the only thing on. There were some other baseball games, but I was flipping through a couple games. I was flipping through the Wild, Golden Knights. No, not the Wild. No. Yeah, that too. But I was flipping through. To start, it was the Lightning, Islanders. It was the Lightning, Panthers, then Islanders, Penguins, and then I was looking at the what was the other game? Oh, the Maple Leafs, Canadiens. So that game started earlier than the other games, and then the Wild Knights. So I was watching pretty much all the NHL playoff games, just flipping back and forth. I had the Islanders and Lightning on there for a while. Lightning and the game was done. Islanders game was done, and then Maple Leafs and stuff was still going on. A scary moment in the Maple Leafs game with John Tavares. Obviously with his neck, he got hit, was on the ice, and the Canadiens player came over and hit him right in the neck. He did not mean to. There was no intent. It was kind of a bang play. Tavares got hit. He was on the ice, and just a second later, guy hit him with his knee. He did not mean to hit him. He was skating for the puck, and Tavares went down, and it was like a bang. Right when Tavares went down, there was no way of having the Canadiens player slow down, and you also know it wasn't intentional because they're very close. The Canadiens player and Tavares are very close. So hopefully Tavares gets back on the ice soon. I don't think he'll be back on the ice the rest of the season, but it does not look like it's anything threatening, like really bad. It's bad, but it looks like he should be able to make a recovery and be back out there. I don't know exactly what happened, what he did exactly to his neck, but it did not look good. He needed to get stretched off, and he's definitely out. He's out indefinitely, which is no surprise. So hopefully he heals up sooner rather than later. Today, obviously, like I said, Yankees play today. Mets also played today, coming off of a day off yesterday. Like I mentioned, Yankees open up a 3-game set, 6-game homestand against the Chicago White Sox tonight at Yankee Stadium. These are the topics for today's podcast. We got NBA playoff bracket. As you all know, the NBA playoffs start tomorrow. Super exciting as well. First game's on tomorrow is at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll have the Bucks Heat, then you'll have the Clippers Mavericks, then the Nuggets Trailblazers, or actually no, then the Nets Celtics, and then the Nuggets Trailblazers. So you'll have all your games starting tomorrow. Playoff basketball starts tomorrow. I know the play-in series is still going on, but technically playoffs start tomorrow. And obviously Heat and the Bucks will open it up. So, obviously super exciting there. I'm ready for it, obviously, as a Net fan. Nets come in as the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. A lot of people believe they're going to win it all. A lot of people believe they are the favorites to win it all. A lot of people, have them and, the Clippers and, the Suns and, the 76ers and the Jazz all, and then the Lakers. Some people still have them and, all those teams kind of still contending for that ultimate goal of winning a final. So I wanted to get into my bracket. I'm going to break down all the matchups, and I'll give you my NBA championship winner. I did it with the Stanley Cup a couple days ago. I'll do it here. I do it with all the leagues. I do it with the March Madness. I do it with the Stanley Cup. I do it with the NFL playoffs, MLB playoffs. So this is going to be NBA. I'll give you my bracket, give you my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. Then we'll get into the Nets and the Knicks playoff preview. I'm going to be honest. Usually the brackets take a really long time. I'm usually talking about them for 40, 45 minutes of the podcast. So usually by the time I'm done with the bracket, there's only about it's about 55 minutes into the podcast. So I'm going to be honest, the Nets-Knicks playoff preview is probably going to be relatively short. I'm going to kind of do it all when I talk about here, but I'm going to kind of tell you what you should expect from a Nets fan and a Knicks fan. Nets fans, I'll tell you what you should expect. I'm obviously a Net fan, and Knicks fans, what you should expect, right? And how many series you could win, a realistic possibility. Because obviously, there's fantasy and then they're realistic. So I will give you a realistic. I think I'll give you a realistic goal for the Knicks this time, and then a realistic goal for the Nets, and I'll give you all that stuff. Then we'll close out the podcast with the New York sports update and fantasy. Obviously, a lot to get to. NBA playoff games this weekend, and Nets and the Knicks and the Yankees and the Mets and the Islanders and all bunch of stuff to close out the podcast. Like I always mention, it is in fact a Friday, so I do not do podcasts over the weekends. So I will cover everything that's going on the weekend. I'm super fired up about NBA playoffs. I'm super fired up about NHL playoffs that are going on. I'm really ready. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN, or ABC actually. Nets Celtics, game 1 of that series. Hopefully the first game of many for the Brooklyn Nets, as we hope to hold up at the end of all this. Hopefully the Brooklyn Nets are having a parade somewhere in Brooklyn, I would assume. I don't know where exactly. Somewhere on this planet, they will have a parade. That's obviously the goal. And Knicks fans, same thing. Obviously, you would love to see that happen. It's going to be very difficult for the Knicks. Not saying they're not a good team. They're a couple pieces away from getting to that point. But definitely, the New York Knicks are headed in the right direction and definitely seem to get their coach and got a lot of young talent. And Julius Randle's had a great season. And I'll talk all about it as we get through the bracket. But with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get into it. So obviously this weekend is the start of the NBA playoffs, as I'm going to move this over here and get the bracket in play here. And obviously the play-in series has already started. So I'm going to, obviously, since I don't do podcasts over the weekends, I do not, tomorrow the bracket will be full. By tonight, the bracket will be full. After the Warriors-Grizzlies game, the bracket will be full, meaning all the games will be planned out. Right now, we do not know who the Utah Jazz are going to play first game. That will either be the Warriors or the Grizzlies. I have already went ahead and predicted who I think is going to win that series. It is not, I already went ahead. The play-in game doesn't really impact my pick much, but I have predicted who I think is going to win that series already. So even though the bracket isn't fully complete and we don't know if it's either going to be the Warriors or the Grizzlies, and I'll give you my game pick on that a little bit later, it's either going to be the Warriors or Grizzlies that play the Utah Jazz. That will decide tonight. So technically tomorrow will be the full bracket, because we still have one unanswered question, and that's between who are the Jazz going to play. Now, I don't really think it matters who the Jazz is going to play. I'm not going to spoil it, but I think it's pretty obvious who's going to win that series. So, That's the one thing. But other than that, these are the matchups. It's Jazz versus whoever wins the Wizards. Oh, not the Wizards. Oh, my gosh. I'm going to say it all the time. Forgive me if I say that. It's either the Jazz and the Warriors or Grizzlies. And then it's the Clippers, Mavericks. Then Nuggets, Trailblazers, and Suns, Lakers. So those are your Western Conference games. And then your first-round matchups in Eastern Conference are 76ers, Wizards, Hawks, Knicks, Bucks, Heat, and Nets, Celtics. So, with all that being said, we were just about 10 minutes in, and I wanted to get to this. If you notice, my intro wasn't that long because I wanted to get to this. I want to get going because it does take a long time. So, with all that being said, let's get into the 2021 NBA playoff bracket. Now, obviously, I will go through each round, the first round, second round, third round, and championship. First round, then semis, and an Eastern Conference Final, a Western Conference Finals, and then the championship. And I will give you my NBA Final winner, and we'll talk all about it. So with all that being said, let's get into the 2021 NBA playoff bracket. We're going to start off like I did with the Stanley Cup. I'll start off in the top left-hand corner. Starting it right off in the Western Conference, number 1 seeded Utah Jazz will play the 8th seed, which is either the Golden State Warriors or the Memphis Grizzlies, like I mentioned just a minute or two ago. I mentioned whoever wins that game will play the Jazz. First round. Now, obviously, we all know what happened to the Utah Jazz this season. They've had a good team the past couple years, but to be honest, I don't think anyone expected them to be this good. And their head coach Quinn Snyder has had a great season. He's one of the finalists. It's Quinn Snyder, DeMonte Williams, and Tom Thibodeau are the 3 finalists to win NBA Coach of the Year. And Snyder's done an excellent job. Obviously, it's been about the same roster, with Ingles, and obviously he's a candidate for 6th Man of the Year. And you got Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, who's a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. So, he's taken a roster that's got a lot of talent. Now, have the Jazz in past years, the Jazz have not been this good. The Jazz did finish with the best record in the NBA. So they're obviously coming in. They're not the favorites to win it all, but they're obviously coming in, out of all these teams, they had the best regular season record-wise coming into this, and they had a great season. They started off a little slow. The first 10, 15 games this season were a little slow, but it seemed like, I don't know what it was, but something got into them, and they've just been dominant all year long, and obviously led by, Donovan Mitchell, who's arguably one of the best players in the league, and then you got Rudy Gobert, who's an excellent rebounder, an excellent defensive player, obviously is the finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. And obviously, then you got Joe Ingles, who's a finalist for, 6th Man of the Year. So, this is a team that, has got a lot of good guys, and you obviously got, this is a team that's got a lot of good guys and got a lot of good players, got a lot of good talent, and, this is a team that definitely, they've got a playoff experience, and that's something that I think is, big when it comes to, playoffs, is I go off of a lot of, playoff experience. And obviously they got Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles, who are 2 finalists. I wanted to just check that again. I believe Jordan Clarkson was a finalist. He was. The Jazz have got a lot of talent. There's no surprise there. Now you go to the 8th seed, and personally, I'm going to give you my game pick now. I might as well. I think the Warriors will win tonight. So you go to the 8th seed, and you look at the Warriors or the Grizzlies. This is what's going to be tough about it. You look at the Warriors, and they're going to have guys like Stephen Curry and, Draymond Green and, Kelly Oubre, and, they're good players, but they're, Curry definitely, this is one of his weaker supporting casts. He's used to having, a lot of good guys. He's used to having Sean Livingston and Kevin Durant and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and all those guys. He's used to having that. Now, Curry has had an excellent year, arguably his best in his career, and, the Warriors are not the Golden State Warriors that they once was when they had Durant and when they had, all those, Klay Thompson. Obviously, they still have him, but Klay Thompson tore his Achilles. So, and then you look at the Grizzlies, and they got some guys there. Now, personally, here's my whole thing. I think the Warriors, it would be great to see the Warriors, maybe make a little bit of a run again. But personally, I don't think it matters. Whether the Grizzlies or Warriors win tonight, I think the Jazz take this series. And I think the Jazz take this series relatively comfortably. I think with Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, and Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson and guys like that on that team, I think they take the series, and I think they take it pretty easily. I think it depends. If the Warriors win, I could see them winning in 5. If the Grizzlies win, I think they sweep. That's how I see it. So that's what I'll give you my pick. If the Warriors win tonight, I think the Jazz win in 5. I could see the Warriors maybe taking 1 at home. And then if the Grizzlies win, I think the Warriors are better than the Grizzlies. I'm going to give the Jazz the win. I think the Jazz could sweep that series. So I think Jazz move on to the second round and play the winner of the Clippers Mavericks, which I'll get into right now. So obviously, like I just mentioned, Los Angeles Clippers coming as the 4 seed and the number 5 seeded Dallas Mavericks. So you look at the Clippers, and they obviously went out that offseason and got 2 big names. They got Paul George, they got Kawhi Leonard, and they've gotten a good supporting cast for them as well. They've got some solid guys around them as well. And you look at this Clippers team, and obviously headlined by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and they've definitely got some solid players. And you got Pat Bev, who I'm not a big fan of, but he's a good defensive player. So this is a Clippers team that's very good. Very, very good team. And last year, a lot of people had them and the Lakers battling it out. Obviously, the Clippers really struggled in the bubble, couldn't get there. And this year is kind of like another big year for them. It's like, all right, well, you went out, got all those big guys. You didn't win it last year. You're a 4 seed this year. Like, the Lakers very well could be knocked out first round. This is your opportunity to strike and really make a run. And I feel like, in a way, the Clippers might be energized in that way of saying, we have a really good shot. Yes, if we win this series, we're going to have to go play the Utah Jazz, but we have a really good shot at going deep in this playoffs, given that the Lakers might be out earlier than many expected now and maybe even at the beginning of the season. And you look at the Mavericks, and the Mavericks I look at as a growing team that eventually will get to their level of finals contenders. The Mavericks right now, I don't know if they're there yet. They've obviously got Luka Doncic. They've got Kristaps Porzingis. They've got Tim Hardaway. They got guys on their team that are solid. I know that. Are they a final contender yet? I don't know about that. That's what I think separates these two teams. Yes, they got Luka. Yes, they got Kristaps. Luka's arguably the best player, one of the best players in the league right now. Okay? And you got Kawhi and Paul George. I think the Clippers are just the better team in this situation. Now, Mavericks, if they go out this season to get maybe another piece or two, maybe boost the bench a little bit more, I could very well see that. But I think the Mavericks are very close to getting to that next level. I don't think they're there yet. Okay, I'm saying yet. I'm not saying they will never get there. They're going to stink they're only going to make the playoffs and have playoff exits every year. I'm not saying that. I just don't think they're there yet. Give them a couple more years. Now, I don't think the Mavericks are going to go down without a fight. I do think Luka and his supporting cast are going to bring up a good fight. I just think when it comes to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, when they're on together, they're a very dominant duo. I think the Clippers win this series. I'll give them a win in 6. And I think they move on and play the Jazz in the second round. All right, so now we go to the next game here. Like I said, it's nothing against it's nothing against the Mavericks. I just think a little bit more veteranized, a little bit more playoff experience. Kawhi and a good defensive team. I just think the Clippers will be able to contain the Mavericks much better. I have this series going to 6. I don't think it's not going to be a walk in the park for the Clippers in any way. I'm not saying that. Just the Mavericks the Mavericks aren't there yet. They're close though. But the Clippers, they're there. They're there. They're a contender. They're a team that has the talent to win it all. It's just, can they put it together in the playoffs? We'll see. I do think the Clippers win in 6. Next up here, we got the Denver Nuggets and coming as a 3 seed, and the Portland Trailblazers coming in as a 6 seed. Okay, so here's my thing. Obviously, we all know with the Denver Nuggets, they took a big hit this season, losing Jamal Murray. I wouldn't say it was the middle of the year. I would say it's probably towards the end of the year. It wasn't crazy late. It's probably been about a month now, I would say they've been without him. Forgive me if I'm not right on. I remember when it happened, but it was probably about a month or so now, maybe a month and a little bit more now. But anyway, that doesn't matter. But obviously, they lost Jamal Murray, who was having a great year this year and was doing so many things good, and him and Jokic were just having an excellent year together. And obviously Jamal Murray ended up going down with a torn ACL, and that was a huge loss to the Denver Nuggets, and that was one of those losses where that could be a season-defining, that could be a playoff-defining loss. I mean, even though it didn't happen in the playoffs, that could be something that affects you down the road when we get to the playoffs, and all of us, we had no doubt, we all knew the Nuggets were still going to make the playoffs. Some people out there, when Murray went down, they're like, oh, are the Nuggets going to make the playoffs? No, the Nuggets maintained and got to the 3 seed. Now, if Murray is still with the Nuggets, or when he's still on the team, but if he stays healthy, Are the Nuggets maybe a 2 seed, maybe making a late push for the 1 seed? Maybe, but they're in a 3 seed spot right now. And obviously, they've got an MVP front runner, Nikola Jokic. I'm not saying I think he should win or not. I'm not going to give you my opinion on that. That's a different story, different day. But Nikola Jokic, they do have him. And why not? I do think I'll give you it. I do think Nikola Jokic probably will win the MVP. And I do think he deserves it. Now, I'm taking back what I said before, because you might as well just use that as an example of how good this Denver Nuggets team could be. And obviously, with Aaron Gordon, they've got some other solid guys in the team. They're still not the same with, Jamal Murray. I would definitely say that, they definitely miss him a little bit. Does that mean they're not going to win the series? No, but they definitely miss him a little bit. But I just think Nikola Jokic is going to be very tough to slow down. I think he's going to be very hard. He's not going to be easy to slow down. He's a threat, almost everywhere on the court, it seems. The guy, he can hit mid-range, he can drive, he can get in the, in the paint and, throw, could put up a layup. I mean, he can get assists. I mean, the guy's an MVP frontrunner. I mean, what else can he do? He's just having a great year. And as for the Portland Trailblazers, as I look at this, okay, the Nuggets, definitely it might be a little concerning looking at this Nuggets team without Jamal Murray. It might be. They're definitely not the same team, but they're still a solid team. You look at the Trailblazers, and I look at this. I look at the season as the first however many games of the season, and then you look at the last 15 games of the season, and the Trailblazers look terrible. Okay, Damian Lillard, a lot of people had, including myself, as an MVP frontrunner. Not a frontrunner, but in the conversation, top 3 conversation for MVP this year. And Damian Lillard really struggled down the stretch. And they weren't getting points. They weren't, he wasn't getting his big points games. We're all used to, Damian Lillard every night. Or, when you get up and you read through all the stuff that went on in sports throughout the night, we're all used to seeing how good Damian Lillard did. The end of that season this year, the Trailblazers struggled, and they definitely, the Trailblazers are lucky. They could have been playing the Suns first round. Luckily they gained enough, I think they were like 1 game ahead of the Lakers or whatever. The Trailblazers are lucky. They could have been playing the Suns. Not saying the Nuggets aren't as good as Suns, but it's the truth though. I mean, the Suns a lot of people believe are going to win it all. What concerns me about the Trailblazers is what I saw in the final couple games of the season. That's what concerns me. I saw Damian Lillard struggle. I saw C.J. McCollum, Enes Kanter, and Yusuf Nurkic and guys like that not play good enough. Robert Covington. I saw this Trailblazers team as a team just not play together and not play well enough. And that concerns me going to the playoffs. And I know regular season means absolutely nothing. But they're going into the playoffs. Damian Lillard and guys like that, they're kind of going to the playoffs on a little bit of a low note. And I think the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, led by obviously Nikola Jokic, I think they take advantage of that. I think the Nuggets win this series in 6. I think the Trailblazers might get 1 home and maybe, sneak 1 out in Denver. But I do think the Nuggets win the series, and I think they win it in 6, and I think they move on and play the winner of the Lakers-Suns series. Or the Suns-Lakers, however you want to say it. So, what concerned me about the Trailblazers was Damian Lillard's play down the stretch, and as a team, their play down the stretch. That's what concerns me. And I do think the Nuggets are coming into this a much better team, coming into this much more confident. Give me the Nuggets. Alrighty, so next up to finish off the Western Conference first round matchups, we got the Phoenix Suns coming as a number 2 seed and the Los Angeles Lakers coming as a number 7 seed. Now, I know a lot of us some people might have expected, Chris Paul and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and, a team like that on the Phoenix Suns to, maybe they will make a run in the playoffs. But I don't think many people at the beginning of the season had a Lakers-Suns first-round matchup. Now, I'm sure many expected the Lakers to be a 1 seed. I don't think many expected the Lakers to have to be in the play-in series to get to the playoffs. And I don't think many expected the Suns to be the 2nd seed and arguably a top 3, top 5 team in the NBA right now. I don't think many people expected that. So this series here is something that you like to see. A surprising series, a series that at the beginning of the season not many people expected. And, we're now sitting here on May 21st, and then you're looking at a series that, is happening. It is the Phoenix Suns coming as the number 2 seed and the Los Angeles Lakers coming as the number 7 seed. And you got to look at the Suns, and this season, the Suns were a very enjoyable team, and like I said, I'm not rooting for the Suns to win it all. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm a Nets fan. I hope the Nets win it all, right? and I want them to win it all, right? But the Suns this season, like, what an incredible story. Obviously you have Devin Booker, who's been so good. All these years has been so good, so good, so good, so good. And the Suns have stunk. They've been terrible. They've been arguably the worst team in the NBA for the past couple of years. Obviously, last season with the whole bubble, they almost got in, but that's different. That's the bubble. That's kind of that's different. Okay, that means absolutely nothing. This team's completely different. This team's way better. But this has been a Suns team that has struggled throughout the years, and not that they've used the term trust the process, but they got DeAndre Ayton. He was suspended a couple, I think one time, maybe more, but he did get suspended, and he obviously had Devin Booker, who was really good, this young star, and it's almost like the Suns were wasting his talent, and the Suns this offseason went out and said, hey, we got to take advantage of this. Devin Booker right now, you could say he's in his prime. You got DeAndre Ayton, who is young, and you could say he's entering his prime, and you got Chris Paul, who's kind of on the tail end of his career, but still a very solid veteran to have in a locker room and to play. And Chris Paul, a lot of people believe, should be, in the MVP conversation as a top 3. I just look at this Suns team as pretty crazy. I mean, the Suns are using their young talent, DeAndre and Devin Booker, but that's the one thing. And I'm glad to see Devin Booker finally in the playoffs. This is a guy that, first off, I think is very underrated. And second of all, I think is just so good. He's such a good player. He's a good teammate. He's just such a good player, and they've been wasting his talent in a way because he's been on the Suns who, for many years now, they're a 20, 25, 30-win team out of the 82 games. They're, 20 and 62 or, 25. They're at the bottom of the Western Conference every season. And to now see him at the number 2, it's almost like it's a little bit of a refresher. Like, it's okay, like, oh, we got a new team in. And I feel like, in a way, the Suns could, use that as, the Suns, I do think some people still are underrated the Suns. I still do believe that. But I just see the Suns, man. They're just a super fun team to watch. And you got the Lakers. And the Lakers, too. I mean, if you're going to ask me this, and this is where you got to be realistic. Are the Los Angeles Lakers a 7 seed if AD and LeBron don't miss, what seemed like 1 year? It seemed like they missed such a long time. I believe Anthony Davis missed 20 to 30-something games, and LeBron was, right behind him. So combined, they missed, 40 games, which is over half the season. Like I said, 40 is not an exact number. I know it's somewhere in that ballpark. Might be even more, might be less. I don't think it's less, because I know for a fact that LeBron missed over 20 games and Anthony Davis missed over 20 games, so it's got to be way more than 40. Not exactly how much. But let's be honest. If LeBron and Anthony Davis didn't miss 45, 50 games combined together, this is probably a Lakers team that maybe is a 2 seed. I don't know if they're the 1 seed because the Jazz just, I don't know what got into the Jazz this season. They were just on another level. But I definitely think the Lakers definitely could have been could have been a 2 seed if they play. And they aren't. But you got to look at this. Yes, they're coming as a 7 seed, but it's Los Angeles Lakers. It's almost the same team as last year. It's, LeBron, Anthony Davis, and you got a supporting cast. And Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder and guys like that. And I get where people are coming from of saying, oh, the Lakers are going to still make the playoffs. But something about this Lakers team this year, I just don't know. And the Suns are they're a hungry team. The Suns are still playing with a chip on their shoulder, I believe. The Suns are I still feel like the Suns in a way are an underdog. Even though they're a 2 seed, I still feel like people are doubting them. And that's why I'm going to give the Suns here. Because then these Suns are going to come in. I think they got home field advantage. I think they're going to be firing on all cylinders. I really do. And I think this series might come down to, late game physicality. And I just don't know if the Lakers can match what the Suns are trying to do. I'm going to give the Suns here. Now, I do think this series is going to go the distance. I do think this series will go 7 games. But I'm going to give the Suns the win. And I think they move on to the second round. So my second round matchups in the Western Conference are set. Jazz, Clippers, and Nuggets, Suns. Now, let's head to the Eastern Conference now and get set here. So in the Eastern Conference, we got the 1 seed 76ers and the 8-seeded Washington Wizards. Obviously, the Wizards obviously beat the Pacers last night, so they are into the playoffs, obviously, as an 8 seed against the Philadelphia 76ers. And this is kind of very well self-explanatory. as much as some people might think that, Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook are going to heat up and they're going to, might just, beat the 76ers. Okay, a lot of people believe the 76ers are going to win it all. A lot of people do. And I see where those people are coming from. I really do. I'm going to spoiler, shocker. I have the 76ers going deep in this playoff bracket. I'm not spoiling anything. I don't think it's much of a surprise. As much as the Wizards, were terrible in the first half, and there was, Bradley Beal trade rumors, and is Russell Westbrook going to go join his third team in 3 years? As much as that has happened, I believe this is going to be a Wizards team that's going to stay together throughout the offseason. They might look to go all out and try and, get all out and be a solid playoff team. But this is a team that was terrible in the first half of the season, and in the second half, just something clicked with this team, more so the final month of the season, and they obviously were able to get into the play-in series and are now obviously into the playoffs. So, as much as you might say, the Wizards are the hottest team coming in, and, they're arguably the hottest team in the NBA down the stretch, in the final month of the season, they were great. They were, a team that a lot of people were talking about, getting rid of everyone and restarting on that team, and then they made this long run, and, Russell Westbrook putting up triple-doubles, it seems, every night, and, Bradley Beal being up there in the league lead in points per game. He's not leading the league in points per games, but he's definitely up there in that category. And you got Bradley Beal and Westbrook putting up big numbers every night. As much as people might think to give the Wizards the win here, I am going to give the 76ers the win. And I do think the 76ers win this series pretty comfortably. Okay, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, I know them two together have not had playoff success. Now, last season, obviously, Ben Simmons missed I think the whole playoff. I don't exactly know what injury, but I do remember he missed it. Obviously, the Sixers got a lot of pressure on them this year. I'm going to tell you that. Because the Sixers, obviously, that whole trust the process a couple years back, are now a true contender. And they've been kind of a contender the past 3 years, but they've had some terrible exits. They obviously had the one against the Raptors, the buzzer beater. Last year, did they get swept or lost in 5 or something against the Celtics? And then they come in this year, and you're like, okay. Like, out of all this losing in the playoffs, like this, we finally got, our coach, obviously they let go of their old coach. They obviously brought in, Doc Rivers, and you're kind of like, okay, we got a coach with playoff experience, where we're coming in, like, we got Joel Embiid, we got Simmons. Simmons is obviously in the voting for Defensive Player of the Year. And you're looking at this, and you're like, this is a team that's got to make a run. And I do think they do make a run, deep in the playoffs. I do think the 76ers win the series. I think they actually get the sweep. I do. Now, like I said, you could disagree and say the Wizards will make this thing competitive. I think the 76ers sweep pretty easily. I think the defense by Ben Simmons and, the paint presence by Joel Embiid, I just don't think, the Wizards, as much as they might be, with Russell Westbrook and Beal heating up at the right time, I think the Sixers defense, a solid defense, and obviously Ben Simmons, one of the best defenders in the league, I think they will slow down the Wizards offense in that Wizard, I guess you can kind of say, stat team. They've been racking up a big-time stats this season, and I think the 76ers win. I do think they sweep. I think they take care of business pretty easily. Sweep or 5 games. Either sweep or 5 games, something like that. All right, so now we head into our next series. We had the Atlanta Hawks coming as a 4 seed, and you got the New York Knicks coming in as a number 5 seed. Obviously, the New York Knicks, I don't think anyone, and I'm not trying to be mean, but if you say you predicted the Knicks to make the playoffs at the beginning of the season, I'm not going to believe you. Unless if you have video or text proof, I don't know if I'm going to believe you, because I don't think many people expected the New York Knicks to be in the playoffs at the beginning of the season. Now, if you predicted them to be in the play-in series, that's something else. If you predicted them to be a 9 seed, 8 seed, predicted them to be competitive, that's something else. If anyone had the New York Knicks being the 5 seed at the beginning of this year, I think you have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting that prediction right. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's the truth. What Tom Thibodeau has done to this New York Knicks team is unlike a lot of anything else. He has took a team, he has took a roster. They didn't have very active an offseason. They obviously drafted Obi Toppin, but they're coming back with almost the same roster. It was Mitchell Robinson. Obviously Mitchell Robinson. They obviously added some parts throughout the season like Derrick Rose, but you got Mitchell Robinson, you got Julius Randle, Frank Ntilikina, R.J. Barrett, Obi Toppin. It's Obi Toppin obviously not, but those are the same guys from last season. And this just goes to show you the New York Knicks. It wasn't always the talent; it was the head coach. And it's in sports in general. This goes to show you how much of an impact a coach can make. It wasn't the talent with the New York Knicks all these years. Now, did they get the biggest guys coming in here? No. They had a lot of really bad players come in here. But to be honest, this is a team that is pretty much the same lineup as last year, the same talent as last season, the same guys. And Tom Thibodeau took it, and he's mixed and mashed a little bit with the lineup, done some switching, some some different stuff, and he's got this team at a 5 seed. And he's got this team playing really good defense. He's got this team playing, better offense with Julius Randle and guys like that. Obviously, Julius Randle leading the way. He's kind of the head man of that team. He's obviously not captain, but I guess you can kind of say he's like a team captain. He's the leader of that team, leader in that locker room. He's that main guy. He's the best player on the New York Knicks. I don't think there's much of an argument otherwise. So, with that being said, you take a good defense and you pair it up against the Atlanta Hawks with a good offense. We all know Trey Young. Now, the one issue I have with Trey Young, and I will always say this, I think he's a great player. I think Trey Young's a great player. I think he's going to finish this league. I think he's going to have a very successful career. I could see an MVP or two ahead of him. I definitely think Trey Young will have an MVP caliber season. When is that going to be? I think it's eventually. He's still developing, and he's not really. I wouldn't say he's developing. He's kind of Trey Young, but Trey Young's very good. The one issue I have with Trey Young is the whole flopping. The fouling. Oh, I drive into the paint and I draw a foul and all that stuff. Now, that's one thing the Knicks got to realize. They got to play disciplined basketball. And they've done a good job of that, but they can't let Trey Young get under their skin. They cannot let Trey Young control that game. Meaning, if Trey Young, is whining about not getting a call, the Knicks can't buy into it and start actually making actually making a reason why they should call it. So I think the Knicks, if they continue to play solid defense and solid offense, the one issue I have with this Hawks team is their defense. Their offense is very good, but the Knicks have taken control of the Hawks this season. They've done a good job. I think the Knicks win the series. I am going to pick the New York Knicks to win a playoff series. That's not something I would have thought I would be saying at the beginning of the season, had the Knicks winning the playoff series. Now, I would have been shocked to see them get to the playoffs, let alone me predicting the New York Knicks to make the playoffs, not make the playoffs, that too, but to win a playoff series. I think the New York Knicks, I think they win a playoff series. And I think they win it in 6. I could see the Hawks. I could see the series starting off 1-1. I could see the Knicks winning game 1, and then the Hawks coming back game 2, then you head to Atlanta. And then maybe the Hawks take, then it's kind of a 2-2, and I think it needs to be a competitive series, but I think the Knicks win. All right, next up, we got the Milwaukee Bucks coming as a 3 seed and the Miami Heat coming as a 6 seed. Here's my issue with the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, their regular season, they've had some good regular seasons before. We've all seen it. Giannis and, this season, Middleton and, all those guys and, Holiday and, they've got all of them. They've got them all. The Milwaukee Bucks, where is the playoff success with this team? Where is it? I'm not going to give you much detail into this pick other than I need to see the Milwaukee Bucks play good into the playoffs for me to buy into what they put out into the regular season. Because the Milwaukee Bucks team that takes the court this season, it was 72 times. Obviously next season and every season it's 82, but this season was 72 obviously because of COVID. The Milwaukee Bucks that take the court this season 72 times, past seasons has been 82 times, is not the Milwaukee Bucks team that takes the court game 1. And we're going to see it tomorrow. It's the first NBA playoff game. We're going to see it. They're going to be on national television. We're going to see if this Milwaukee Bucks team can actually win a playoff series. And like I said, I'm not going to go into much detail. I think it's obvious. I think the Miami Heat beat the Milwaukee Bucks. I do. The Milwaukee Bucks have not shown to me that they can win a playoff series. They've obviously won some, but it's easy to beat the Magic. It's easy to crush all those teams. But they have not shown to me that they can consistently win and get deep in the playoffs. Every season, it's the same thing with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think the Bucks are going to win it all. I think the Bucks have a great chance. It's the same thing every season. The playoff success isn't there. The head coaching with Budenholzer. As long as he's the coach, the Milwaukee Bucks will not win an NBA final. He's not the right guy to be coaching a team to an NBA Finals. I think the Miami Heat with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, a lot of Duncan Robinson, a lot of good guys in that team, led by obviously Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. Some think Adebayo got snubbed from Defensive Player of the Year, finalists. With that team, that offense, people, they made the NBA Finals last season. I think the Heat win, and I think they win in 5. This is a big pick. I mean, I think a lot of people might disagree with me. I think the Heat beat the Bucks in 5 games. I think the Heat take care of business pretty easily. I don't believe in this Bucks team whatsoever. I don't. Until they show me that they can consistently win in the playoffs, it's the same thing every year. Like, people said this last year, I think they could do it. People said the year before that. People are saying again this year. It's the same thing over and over and over again. They're not going to have success in the playoffs this year. I believe anyway. Now, if we're sitting here at the end of the season and they're NBA Final champions, sure, then I'll be wrong. But it's not. I think the Miami Heat will win the series, and I think they'll win it in 5. Next up, we got the number 2 seeded Brooklyn Nets. Number 2 seed Brooklyn Nets and the number 7 seed Boston Celtics. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets are my favorite team. And obviously, we all know the Brooklyn Nets obviously went out, got Kevin Durant, got Kyrie Irving, and then obviously this most recent acquisition was to get James Harden, and it's the big 3. I mean, this is a team that's going all out for a finals title. This is a team that's got no other, goals on their mind. Their only goal is to win a final. Their only goal is to win a title. Their only goal is to, obviously at the end of the season to be hoisting up that trophy. That's it. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden being known for the big 3 throughout the NBA. A lot of people believe are the best team in the NBA. A lot of people believe are the favorites to win. Although they were a 2 seed, when this team's healthy, you add Blake Griffin, you add Joe Harris, and you add those other guys into the mix, it's a very dangerous team. And it's been fun to watch. And I know a lot of people might think, Jason Tatum's 50 points and that team may propel them. Okay, I said this with the Boston Celtics. I said, I don't think this team's going anywhere far. I said, whether they play the Nets or not, I don't think this team's getting that deep into the playoffs without Jaylen Brown. Jason Tatum could drop 50 all he wants. I don't know if they can get deep enough into their bench, get enough quality minutes without Jaylen Brown. I don't. Now, I know Jason Tatum has had a great season and, has obviously been a solid player, but this is a Celtics team led by Brad Stevens, whose job you could honestly say is up in the air, especially if they come out flat in this series. The Nets, now, I know regular season means everything, but the Nets were 3-0 this season against the Celtics, and they beat them 3 times. So, the Nets obviously have beaten the Celtics 3 times. We've had success. I think the Nets do win this series. I think we win it comfortably. I think Harden, KD, Kyrie, all healthy, all playing well together, is one of the most dominant teams in the NBA. I will give the Nets the win. I could see them winning 4-5. The Celtics, I think I could see the Celtics maybe getting 1 in Boston. But other than that, I think the Nets win in 5. They move on and play the Miami Heat. So the Eastern Conference second round is set. 76ers and the Knicks, and the Miami Heat and the Brooklyn Nets. So now here we got start off the second round. We got the Utah Jazz and the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, obviously, I talked about the Utah Jazz just a little bit ago. I said about that Utah Jazz team, I was saying that this is a team that is very, very good. And Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and that defense and that bench, Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson, 2 guys who are in the 6th Man of the Year voting, that team is very good. And they've got good bench. They've got a good bench. And they've got a good starting lineup. They've got a lot of it. But, I look at this Clippers team, and there's just something about this team that I just feel like, propels them over a lot of the other NBA teams out there. And I get it. Quinn Snyder and, that Jazz team has had an excellent year. And I'm not taking anything away from them. Do I think they're the best team in the NBA? I would tend to disagree. I know they have the best record, and I know they're coming in as a 1 seed, and not just in the West, but overall, a 1 seed in the NBA. I get that. Do I think the Jazz are the best team in the NBA? I don't know if I would agree with that, But I would agree with that. I think this Clippers team, they've definitely got, an interesting situation because you went out and got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and you're thinking to yourself, boy, oh boy, we got ourselves a great situation. And you fire Doc Rivers, and now Doc Rivers obviously with the Sixers, and now you're kind of in that, and obviously you got Ty Lue now, but the Clippers are kind of in that situation where this is a big year for them. If they don't win, if they don't get to the finals, at least get to the finals this season, I think there could be maybe more changes. Now, do I think they're going to tear it all down? No, but it's a big year. A lot of people expected them to win it all last year. They didn't. This year, again, a lot of people expecting them. If they don't do it this year, next year is what? Are you going to expect them all to do it again? I think with Paul George and, Kawhi, I'm not worried about Paul George in the playoffs. I know some people are worried about him, with obviously, he had a terrible bubble. I understand a lot of people are worried about him. I'm not. I think the Clippers win this series. I think they win it in 6. And I think they move on to the Western Conference Finals. I think Paul George, Kawhi Leonard will be able to outduel that Jazz team. Then to finish off here, the Western Conference second round, we got the Nuggets coming as a 3 seed versus the number 2 seeded Phoenix Suns. I mentioned this earlier about the Denver Nuggets. Okay, I would have the Denver Nuggets going really deep in the playoffs if they had Jamal Murray. I might have the Nuggets getting to the finals if they had Jamal Murray. I still think Jamal Murray's a big hole in their roster. I get it, they have Jokic, and I get it, they got some of these other solid guys there, but, Jamal Murray's definitely, a big hole in their roster. And I just think, when you look at the two rosters and you look at that, what's more filled and what, who's got more talent across the board, I think you got to give it to the Phoenix Suns. And you got to give, you got to give Devin Booker and Chris Paul and Ayton and all those guys a lot of credit. They took this Suns team from really being a nobody to taking it and being not only, a big team, and obviously for the Arizona sports, but being a big team for the NBA. I mean, they're the 2 seed in the Western Conference. That's big. And, obviously the Suns are going to be home this series. They are going to be home. So they got home field advantage. So they're going to win they're going to obviously be home the first 2 games. Now, like I said, I think Jokic is more than capable of, taking this Nuggets team and putting them on his back. Now, if the Nuggets were to play the Jazz, I think you might see the Nuggets win, but the Suns, I think, are one of the more lethal teams in this playoffs. They got a lot of weapons. And I feel like the Suns are just hungry. They're just hungry. The fan base has been hungry for any sort of success. They're the 2 seed, and now the fan base is almost like they're getting a little ahead of themselves. They're like, oh, finals or bust this season, when that's not really the case with the Suns, because I don't think many people expected them to be a 2 seed. But I'm going to give the win to the Phoenix Suns, and I'm going to say the Suns win. I think they win this series. I could see them taking the series in 5. Nothing against the Nuggets or anything, but I could see them taking the series in 5. I do. I think the Suns should be able to take care of the Nuggets and Jokic and slow them down. Now, you might not slow down Jokic, but I think as a team, you should be able to slow them down. I think you should. That's how I see it. I think the Suns move on and play the 4-seeded Clippers, and it's going to be the Los Angeles Clippers and the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference Finals. Now let's head over to the Eastern Conference second-round matchups. We'll start it off with the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks. Now, I said this, obviously 76ers 1 seed, Knicks the 5 seed. I said this, I've been saying this since the Nets and the Knicks clinched their seeding. The Knicks obviously clinched it on the final day of the season. Nets clinched it also on the final day of the season. I said this really after the regular season. I said, how great would it be? The only way the Nets and the Knicks can meet in the playoffs is if the Knicks and the Nets both get to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the only way. Now, if the Nets would have been let's say the Nets would have been a 3 seed and the Knicks were a 5 seed, or let's say the Knicks ended up being a 6 seed. If the Knicks won their first round matchup and the Nets won theirs, they would have played in the second round. But the only way to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and have a Nets-Knicks matchup is the Knicks got to beat the Sixers and the Nets got to beat the Heat. Now, that gets me to my point here. As much as I think it would be great to see a Brooklyn Nets Miami Heat battle, and as a Net fan, I don't really want to play the 76ers if we do move on, because the Sixers are a really good team. I don't know if I would really want to play them, but I do think the Sixers will win the series. Now, Are the Knicks going to go down without a fight? I don't think the Knicks will go down without a fight. I don't think the Knicks are going to get crushed. I don't think they're going to get smoked. I don't think they're going to get swept. Okay? I don't think the Knicks are going to get swept this series. As much as people might think the Knicks are going to get swept and they're going to get smoked, I think the Knicks are going to actually be relatively in this series. Relatively competitive. I really do. And the reason I say that is because they're head coached by an amazing coach in Tom Thibodeau. Okay? He's not going to let his guy just get smoked on national television. Okay? He's going to try his best to try and win this game. Win this series. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very hard. It's not going to be easy. The one issue with the New York Knicks is their offense. That's the one problem. Now, their offense, I'm not saying is bad, but when you compare it to a team like the Sixers, and the Sixers got a very good defense, I just don't know if the Knicks will be able to survive, the defensive play from the 76ers. And I think, I know the Knicks defense is also very good, but I could see the Sixers with a little bit more talent on that offensive side of the ball with Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and Simmons and Embiid and guys like that. I think the Sixers will win. Now, I think the Sixers win this series in 5. Now, I want to make this clear. 5 might seem like a blowout, but I think they're close games. I don't think they're 30-point games. I don't think they're I think that's actually a low-scoring series because I think it's two good defenses battling it out. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring series. I don't think it's going to be like the first game. I don't think it's going to be like 130 to 125. I think it might hit maybe 105 to 90 something or 105 to 103. I think it's going to be a close series. Now, like I said, I don't think the Knicks will win. I think the Sixers win in 5 games. With that being said, I don't think 5 games might seem bad, but I think 5 close games. I just don't know if the Knicks will be able to propel themselves late. I do think the Knicks might take 1. I could actually see the Knicks shocking the world and taking the first game. I could actually see that. Call me crazy, call me whatever you want. I could see the Knicks going to Philly and winning the first game. We've seen that sometimes where they'll get off to a quick start. I could see that. Or I could see them taking 1 at home. Maybe with their backs against the wall and going all out there and just leaving it all out on the court. I could maybe see that. But I do think it's going to be a close series. I think it's going to be 5 games, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout every game. So then the 76ers move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then we got the Brooklyn Nets and the Miami Heat. Nets are obviously a 2 seed. Heat are a 6 seed. Okay, I look at this game and say, hey, you got to hope that, the Nets come in this game focused, dialed in already. The Nets, obviously, their goal is to win a championship. They got to empty the tank every single game. They got to go out there, give it their all. The Heat are a very good team. I know they're coming as a 6 seed, but this is a Miami Heat team that's very similar to the team they had last year, and look what they did. They got to the NBA Finals, obviously lost to the Los Angeles Lakers. But they were, competitive in that series, and they still are a very good team. And I'm not taking the Heat lightly here if the Brooklyn Nets do face the Heat. As much as some people on paper, it might look like, the Heat are a 6 seed. The Heat are a 6 seed. They were 2 seeds away they were 1 seed away from having to play in the play-in series. That's not the case. The Heat are a very good team, and they've, obviously Jimmy Butler missed some time this season. There's been some injuries with that team. They obviously went out and got Victor Oladipo. He's done for the season, so that move hasn't really done anything for them. As much as on paper it might look like the Miami Heat are not a team that's going to make a very deep playoff run and are not going to be competitive, I do think the Heat are going to be a competitive series. Although I think the Nets will win, and strictly because we've got arguably some of the best basketball players in the NBA, I do think the Nets pull this series out. Now, is this going to be a walk through the park for the Brooklyn Nets? No. I think the Heat are competitive. Nets did lose to the Heat this season. I believe we also beat them. If we played them 3 times, I think, this season, or once or twice. I know we beat them once. I know we lost to them once. But, like I said, I think the Nets beat the Heat. I think it's a 6-game series. I think just home field advantage and the Brooklyn Nets big 3, I think, is going to be too much to take down. I think the Nets move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I got the 76ers Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, let's go into the Western Conference Finals here. We got the Clippers versus Suns starting it out. Clippers are the 4 seed. Suns are the 2 seed. I mentioned this earlier. Okay, the Suns, I believe, are going to come into this series. They're going to come into this series, firing. They're going to beat the Los Angeles Lakers. They're going to beat the Denver Nuggets. That's how am I predicting it here. They're going to come into this series firing on all cylinders. Now, the Clippers did just get off of beating the Jazz in this, and then obviously the Mavericks, and I get that. But the Clippers and the Suns, a battle of LA Phoenix. You got CP3 and Devin Booker and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And I'm going to continue to go back to this. I do believe that, going into this game, now both teams will obviously have some pressure on them, especially if the Suns, take care of business in the 2 games and you go into the series and you're thinking, wow, the Suns actually very well could make a, final run. As much as both these teams will have pressure on them, I do think the Clippers will probably have a little bit more, only because, they're a team that a lot of people believe to win, and they're a team that, with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, a lot of people just expect this team to make the finals. If they don't do it for 2 straight years, it's kind of like it's gonna be. It's definitely gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for Clippers fans to endure if they don't win this series, because you went out and got Kawhi and Paul George. You spent all that money, and now it's like, okay, we didn't make it last year. We get that. You had a terrible playoff. You get there this year, like, okay, if you don't make it this year, then, like, next year's got to be your big year. If you don't make it 3 straight years, it's like people expected this team to win it last year. Some people think they're going to win it again this year. They didn't win it last year. If they don't win it this year, then next year's a big year for them. They are going to come into the series with a lot of pressure. Now, with that being said, who do I think is the better team? As much as I think it would be great for the NBA to see a team like the Suns make it, I do think the Clippers beat the Suns. Okay, I just think the Clippers, are just in one of those situations where it's just like, they're gonna be almost like the Nets. They know this is a big year for them. They know that, if they don't win it all this year, the fan base is gonna be happy. It's going to be 2 years now without winning it. You're going to go into next season as almost like your make or break year. And if they don't win it next year, this whole Paul George Kawhi thing could be all blown up. It's a big year for them. And I think the Clippers are one of these teams that are going to empty the tank. I think they're going to be one of these teams that's going to go into the series, block out all the outside noise, and just focus, dial in, while the Suns, I shouldn't say they're not going to block out the outside noise. I just think, when it comes down to competitiveness and playoff experience, I give the advantage to the Clippers. Now, I think this series does go the distance. I think the Clippers win this series in 7 games, and I think the Clippers move on to the NBA Finals. I just think Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and that team, with their supporting cast, I just believe physicality, veteran presence, playoff experience will be able to top the Phoenix Suns. Clippers get to the NBA Finals. They're a 4 seed. I didn't have them making it last year, but I just believe, I think they very well could beat the Mavericks. I think their first 2 series, if they go as planned, I think are very realistic series to win. Jazz, I think they could very well beat. Mavericks, I think, very, very good possibility they beat them, and the Jazz. Suns are going to be tough. I have it going the distance. But like I said, physicality, veteran presence, playoff experience is a big part of how I predict. I think the Clippers get to the NBA Finals. Now, the Eastern Conference. We have the 76ers coming as a 1 seed, and the Brooklyn Nets coming as a 2 seed. I'm a Nets fan. I really believe for a long time now, when we got these guys, that they are a final contending team. That they are a team that should win the finals. And as a Brooklyn Net fan, as much as you might think, this is kind of one of these favoring team responses, if the big 3 is on, we've seen what it can do. Harden, Kyrie, KD, we've seen what this team can do. And I've always said this. As much as I dislike, because I try to be as fair as I am with sports. And you know how I am. Like, whenever I make these podcasts, I do as much realistic predicting as I can. I know a lot of people might, think that I'm being relatively biased predicting the Nets to win, but they are the favorites to win the NBA Finals. They are. Look it up. Look up the NBA favorites to win the finals, and the Nets, they have the best odds to win it. So, as much as a lot of times I don't always like to, give my teams all the wins and, give my teams, every win and, all that stuff. As much as I don't like to do that, because I don't like, I don't like when other people favor their teams, and I try not to favor my teams as well. So as much as you might think I'm favoring the Brooklyn Nets here, I've said this from the start of the season. I put them at number 6 in my power rankings. I said this at the beginning of the season. It's finals or bust with us. It is. And as much as the 76ers are good and they beat us this season, a healthy playoff Nets team, I just think is unstoppable. I think the Nets win this series. I think this series also goes the distance. I think this series goes to Game 7. I think the Nets win this series. I think the Nets head of the NBA Finals. Like I said, they're the favorites to win it. When the Nets got Kyrie and KD, we all knew as Nets fans, this is a team to win the NBA Finals. And then you add James Harden, and even right there, you're even like, oh my gosh, more of a reason why we should win the NBA Finals. I believe not the New York Nets. I believe the Brooklyn Nets will get to the NBA Finals. And now we have the number 4 seeded Los Angeles Clippers and the number 2 seeded Brooklyn Nets. I think the Nets have the team to win the NBA Finals. I really do. You look at Kawhi Leonard. You look at Paul George. You look at that team. That's very good. They are. I got them all the way here. But when the Nets are healthy and they've got their big three and they're rolling and they're cruising, and I don't think they're really going to get injured. And I will tell you this. Playoff basketball, if it means to win a finals or not, I think the Nets, I don't think there's going to be many injuries. But I think, the Nets, when they're playing together, they're the best team in the NBA. And I think this series will go the distance. I think the Nets win the NBA Finals. And I think the Nets win in 7 games and defeat the Los Angeles Clippers. Like I said, I've always said it. As much as I don't always like to, favor my teams and say they're going to win, and say they're going to win everything. They're the favorites to win it. I've been saying it all season long. This team should win it, and I think they will. I think they defeat the Los Angeles Clippers. I just think they're the best. I just think they're going to come out as a slightly better team. And then they'll beat the Clippers in 7 games and win the NBA Finals. That's how I see it. All right, so let's get into the NBA kind of Knicks preview here. We'll get into that coming up next. Alrighty, so I'm gonna do this really quickly. Just a couple minutes here. Like I said, the Nets-Knicks playoff preview. Okay, I said this. I've been saying with the Nets and the Knicks, right? I think the Nets. I'll start with the Nets. The Nets, it's playoff or bust with them. They gotta win. Not playoff or bust. It's finals or bust. They gotta win. They've gotta win it all. The Nets this season, if they don't win it all, it's a big flop. Now, do I think this team will be together next season? I do. I don't think they're going to jump ship after 1 year. But it's a big year for the Brooklyn Nets. It is. Bruce Brown, Blake Griffin, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, Nick Claxton. It's expected. Us Nets fans expect them to win, and a lot of other NBA fans expect them to win. So, as a Net fan, I would say the kind of the preview and kind of prediction and kind of expectation is to win it all. Now, for the New York Knicks, it's a little different. I think the Knicks, the expectation is to beat the Hawks. I do think the Knicks should beat the Hawks. Now, they do come in underdogs in that series. I disagree with that. I do think the Knicks should beat the Hawks. Now, you might be blowing a little bit out of proportion if you say they should beat the Sixers. I think they will be close. I think that series will be a good series. I do think the Sixers will win in 5, but I think those games will be close. I don't think they're going to be blowouts. But I think a realistic expectation for the Knicks is to beat the Hawks round 1 and get to round 2. And I think the realistic expectation for the Nets and what we hope as Nets fans is to win the finals. Because we've been waiting for this all season long. When we got Kyrie and Kevin Durant, that was the expectation. And we now have James Harden, and it's even more of a reason why we should be able to win the NBA Finals. So that's my quick kind of playoff preview, what to expect from both those teams. Now let's get in to the New York sports and round sports update here. Wizards Pacers yesterday. Wizards got the win, 142-115. So they obviously were moving on And then let's see here. All right. Warriors, Grizzlies. Warriors come in this game 4.5-point favorites. The over-under is 221.5 for this game. This game comes on today, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. I'm going to give the Warriors the win. I mentioned that earlier. All right, so tomorrow's playoff games for the NBA. So Bucks, Heat kick us off. Bucks come into the game 5-point favorites tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to give the Heat the win. And actually, the Bucks tend to lose first games of the playoff series, so I'm actually going to give the Heat the win there. Clippers, Mavericks, I will give Clippers the win. That's 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Clippers coming into that game 5.5-point favorites. And the Nuggets, Trailblazers, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. I will give the Nuggets win. They're 1-point favorites. I will give them the win. I'm going to give all my winners the win. And then Nets, Celtics. Nets come in this game 8-point favorites. The over-under is 228 for this game. This game comes on tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ABC. 8-point favorites. I do think the Nets get the win. Now, on Sunday, we got 3 games. 76ers, Wizards, 6.5-point favorites, Sixers. Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on TNT. I will give the Sixers the win. Suns, Lakers. Suns come into that game 2.5-point favorites, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. I will give the Suns the win. And Knicks, Hawks. Knicks actually coming in 1-point favorites, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TNT. Give me the Knicks to win that game. Nets and Knicks both win, I believe. All right, as for the NHL, Golden Knights won, Canadiens won, Penguins won, and Panthers won. Golden Knights take a 2-1 series lead. Canadiens take a 1-0 series lead. Penguins take a 2-1 series lead, and the Panthers make the lead now 1-2. As for today's games, we got the Bruins, Capitals. The Capitals got to win. I'll give them a win. Hurricanes, Predators. Hurricanes. Oilers, Jets, I do think the Oilers bounce back. And then Avalanche, Blues, I think Avalanche to win. I'm going to make some series predictions here as well. I do think the Hurricanes, or actually do think the Avalanche will win on Sunday as well. I think the Avalanche, I think on Monday, when I'm coming on to the podcast, I think we're talking about the Avalanche sweeping the Blues. That's my prediction. The Hurricanes, I did say I think the Predators will win one at home, so that's either today or to next game, although I could very well see that also being a sweep now. As for the MLB, yesterday the Dodgers won, Pirates won, Red Sox won, Marlins won, Twins won, Astros won, Angels won, Cubs won, Giants won, and Rays won. Yankees also won yesterday 2-0. Yankees moved to 25-19 on the season. Solid win for the Yankees yesterday. We're able to get the job done. As for today, we got the Nationals, Orioles. I'll give Nationals the win. Phillies, Red Sox, give Phillies the win. Brewers, Reds, give Brewers the win. Indians, Twins, give Indians the win. Braves, Pirates, give Braves the win. Rays, Blue Jays, give Rays the win. Astros, Rangers, give Astros the win. Royals, Tigers, give Royals the win. Cubs, Cardinals, give Cubs the win. Dodgers, no, not Dodgers. Rockies, Diamondbacks, give Rockies the win. Angels, A's, give Angels the win. Dodgers, Giants, give Dodgers the win. And Padres, Mariners, give Padres the win. Mets also play today. Mets come in this game 20-17 against the Marlins, who are 20-23. This game comes on today, 7:10 p.m. Eastern Time on Bally Sports Florida and SNY. Mets got Marcus Stroman on the mound. Holloway's on the mound for the Marlins. Stroman's been pitching well this season. He had a tough start the last time out, but I'll give the Mets led by Stroman a win. Yankees also play today. Yankees come in this game 25-19. White Sox come in this game 26-16. This game comes on today, 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time on Pix 11. White Sox got Carlos Rodon on the mound and Jordan Montgomery's on the mound for the Yankees. Over-under is 8.5 for this game. Let's see here. Okay, 74% of people say the White Sox will win. I think it's going to be tough for the Yankees to beat Rodon. I think Monty will pitch well. I could see this going either way. I could see the Yankees winning because I could also see the White Sox winning. I could see the Yankees winning because White Sox have had a lot going on with that team and that, but that lineup is so good in their pitching. That's tough. I guess the Yankees, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the White Sox lose or the Yankees lose. I wouldn't be. To be honest, that's how I see it. Actually, I gotta make a move here in fantasy. Not a big move, just a roster change. I think actually that's tough. Do I put in Mercedes today? I guess so. I got to see how it all goes. All right. Anyway, today, all right. So today we got for fantasy baseball. I'm currently losing 293 to 210. Today I got going Yerman Mercedes, Luke Voigt, Yerman Mercedes, Luke Voigt, Gene Segura, Josh Johnson, Carlos Correa, Marcus Semien, Alex Bregman, Christian Yelich, Austin Meadows, Dylan Carlson, Manuel Margot, of Avisail Garcia, and Matt Olson. And I got Tyler Glasnow on the mound. Now, like I said, you can obviously still have some, roster moves depending on who's in the starting lineup and all that stuff to play out still. But that's my lineup right now. So. But with all that being said, that will do it. Hopefully you all enjoyed the NBA playoff bracket. That's obviously always fun. Always a lot of fun there. And that will do it. Another great week of podcasts in the books. Another great week of podcasts in the book. In the books, whatever you want to say. In the books. So, obviously, as you all know, I take breaks on the weekends, so everybody enjoy your weekend. Enjoy all the great sports that are on, all the NBA, NHL, and MLB. Obviously, hopefully, Yankees and Nets have successful weekends in sports. That should be obviously the hope. That's obviously the goal. And, everybody enjoy your weekend. I will see you all back here on Monday. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.